right. Good morning, commissioners, and over to you, Chair Harrington.
Good morning, everyone, and welcome to the February 7th, 2023 Washington County Board of Commissioners meeting. Clerk Moss,
Thank you, Chair Harrington.
please.
Yes, the Washington County Board of Commissioners, also meeting as the Board of Directors for Clean Water Services and all other county service districts, is now meeting this regular session, February 7th, 2023. Commissioner Willie.
Here.
Commissioner Treese.
Here.
Commissioner Fye.
Here.
Vice Chair Rogers. Here. Chair Harrington.
Here. All righty. First thing on the agenda is public communication. This is an opportunity for members of our community to address the board for up to 5 minutes an individual, or we also have a group rate. Clerk Moss, who do we have today?
So first up, we have a group represented by Mr. Dale Feek. Dale, you can come forward with your group, and you'll have 5 minutes on the clock for your group.
Should I get it? Madam Chair Harrington and Commissioners, I'm Dale Feek, spokesperson for Washington County Citizen Action Network. I'd like to introduce Eric Cannon and Alan Niven. You want to say your name? I just said it. But
Alan Niven with Washington County Citizens Action Network.
Eric Cannon, C-A-N-O-N.
Thank you. We will stay within our 5 minutes. I really appreciate you as county commissioners having a timer, and now you know what we go through when we're up here having 2 or 5 minutes. Most of you stayed within your minutes times. That was good. I sent you an email, 3 topics. 1, Amazon deteriorating too fast for species, climate to adapt, and I said I'd give you a document, and I did. Further information about that. And then I also gave you what can you do? You do Washington County to help preserve biodiversity and human welfare, and I have you a document. It's written by the board of WCCAN, and then race to the bottom line. And so we don't want to spend a lot of time for me talking right now, so we're going to start, and you can follow along. I gave you the words to the race to the bottom line. It has to do with climate change, written by Will Hobbs, who is a former Intel employee, but he has his own group. And Alan's going to play the song. I gave people in the audience also some copies.
If the sounds of birds are your delight, step outside in the early light as the morning spreads its misty wings.
Birds announce an early spring. We'll have robins sooner in the spring and later in the fall, higher up in the mountains, closer to the pole. So rev those engines, burn that coal, it's a race to the bottom line. Short-term profit is our goal. When the climate spins out of control, we'll have more oil, we'll have more gold in the race to the bottom line.
The Northwest Passage
Opened up today and an ice cap melted all away. And offshore oil rigs are on display at the new resorts in Prudhoe Bay. You can still see polar bears and carnival shows. They look so real you'd never know. They went extinct 10 years ago in the race to the bottom line. The chorus, care, I'm doing fine in the race to the bottom line. No, I don't care, I'm doing fine in the race to the bottom line. Verse 2.
grab your
Profits, that's your mission. Pull the strings of you politicians if you want to win. Control the spin, pretend since this isn't in. If global warming's here to stay, we'll find a way to make it pay. Who needs the future anyway in the race to the bottom line? Verse, I don't care, I'm doing fine in the race to the bottom line. No, I don't care, I'm doing fine in the race to the bottom line. Bridge 2.
If
Disaster shows are your delight. Watch the news most any night. Famines, drought, torrential rains, tornadoes, floods, and hurricanes. Fires, not in there. Sooner in the spring, later in the fall. Higher up the mountains, closer to the poles. So rev those engines, burn that coal. It's a race to the bottom line. Short-term profit is your goal when the climate spins out of control. We'll have more oil, we'll have more gold in the race to the bottom line.
And when New Orleans
And the Keys are at the bottom of the sea. Scuba gear will let you see their houses and their factories. And think of all the jobs galore, building seafront condos and so much more on Oklahoma's ocean shore in the race to the bottom line. The chorus.
Yeah,
I don't care, I'm doing fine in the race to the bottom line. No, I don't care, I'm doing fine in the race to the bottom line. I don't care, I'm doing fine in the race to the bottom line. No, I don't care, I'm doing fine in the race to the bottom line. Let's don't make it a big race. 1 second. Will Hobbs said he'd be on there. I hope he's on listening to us sing his song. Thank you very much. He gave it to us. He's on the line. He should be listening to it. Yes, we have copyright. Same as we have copyrights. The footprint, a funny thing happened on the way extinction. Everyone have those books. John Patterson gave me permission to give anybody.
All right.
Thank you.
I did not expect to be a part of a hullabaloo in this room. So, and those of you of a certain age might remember a hullabaloo. Thank you.
Memorable start.
Thank you for listening. And 5 minutes, I think we did it.
Thank you. Next, Madam Chair, we have Fran Warren online because we had no one additionally sign up in the room. Fran, can you hear us?
Yes, I'm here.
All right, please go ahead for up to 2 minutes.
How do I follow that one? I guess, well, I'm also going to speak about climate. Good morning, commissioners. Yes, it's been a long time since I've spoken to you directly. For the record, my name is Fran Warren. I live at 835 Southwest Tarchmark Way, Portland, Oregon, 97225. Thank you for setting time aside to have a discussion regarding climate change. I'm advocating for further steps on this issue, and I am in support of Commissioner Fai's resolution on addressing the climate crisis and developing climate action plan to establish a commitment as a first step. As a former Intel manager and finance geek, I have empathy for your task of managing the county budget. I have mentioned in earlier testimony to you, commissioners, we do not expect a blank check to just go do any new activity. Your constituents are quite well aware of your budgetary constraints for the county, and we do appreciate the upcoming budget discussion to be held on the 23rd of February to help the community to better understand the total picture and current challenges. But I see there are clear return on investment opportunities by taking these first steps in addressing the climate crisis. I have submitted a first installment testimony which touches on the public health area and a couple of funding possibilities. I hope you got a chance to look at it. I don't know if you have. And I do plan to do much more in-depth research to provide factual numbers totally relevant to our county to help you in this budgetary prioritization process. I had testified before about the agricultural losses due to the heat dome and due to the spring freeze in the past year. And Washington County has no provisions for assistance to our farmers nor their workers. Meteorologists have indicated this is going to be an ongoing problem and could get worse. So I plan to research factual information regarding our climate, dollar and jobs impacts on agriculture, and some recommended opportunities for relief in this arena. Another return on investment opportunity. Your community can offer assistance, but your agencies need to be empowered by you, the commissioners, to utilize the information and to take action. These are only two of those areas where we need to address the climate crisis. I request that you support Commissioner Fai's resolution to take the first step. Thank you.
All right, give it just a minute. Sorry about that. And you meant to utilize the raise hand function to comment on any other county-related business. Give you just a moment for our online attendees. Not seeing any additional hands, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Clerk Moss. And with that, we'll move on through our agenda. The next item on our agenda is the consent agenda. Today's consent agenda consists of 10 items, 2 sets of minutes, 1 item from the Board of Commissioners, 1 item from Health and Human Services, 5 items from Land Use and Transportation, and 1 item from Community Development. What are the wishes of the commission?
Move for approval.
Second.
We have a motion and a second to adopt today's consent agenda. All those in favor, please vote by raising your hand or saying aye. Thank you, commissioners. Any opposed? The motion carries unanimously 5-0. Next, we have one of our Cultural Month recognitions for Black History Month. And I'm not seeing, please, presentation from our staff to proclaim February 2023 as Black Heritage Month. Welcome.
Good morning. My name is Lakiana Jordan. It's a pleasure to present the Black History Month Declaration to the Washington County Board of Directors. I am the Executive Director and founder of Word is Bond. It's a nonprofit based out of Portland, Oregon. Our mission is, what if young Black men were empowered to their fullest potential? Part of our work centers around engagement around law enforcement and healing the divisions between the law enforcement and the Black community. We've had the pleasure of having the partnership with Chief Jim Coleman of Hillsborough Police, as well as the Beaverton Police Department, and also Tigard as well in some capacity. I'm here to talk about Black History Month and the celebration of Black contributions across this country as well as locally. We know it was Black labor that built the economy of this country, the forced enslavement of Black and enslaved African peoples. We also know that there's contributions across many other areas, including the unsolicited use of the cells of Henrietta Lacks to further cancer research. But while it's important we look at Black history, I would like today to talk about Black futures, and specifically Black futures here in Washington County. And I want to talk about it in 2 pieces: community safety and creating a welcoming environment in Washington County, as well as the educational outcomes as well. We know that Oregon was founded as a state that was supposed to be free of Black people, and that to this day we are working to overcome that unwelcoming past. And for Black people living in Portland, the common knowledge is that the further you go away from Portland, the more unwelcoming it becomes. And Portland itself does not have a very high bar of being a welcoming city. I want to bring up 2 incidents that I've had personal connection with in terms of community safety. As I mentioned, my organization works to engage young Black men with law enforcement, which is a very difficult conversation. I recently had a young man in my program who was walking in Beaverton and was pulled over, stopped while he was walking by the Beaverton police for jaywalking. The officer felt it was a good use of his time to cite him for a jaywalking ticket and make him appear in court. I was very disappointed to hear about this incident. And when he went to court, the judge couldn't believe that's why he was there, and she promptly, as she should, have thrown the ticket out. When I asked this young man if he would like to follow up with the Beaverton Police Department, he said no, because he feels like things aren't going to change. And that is a common sentiment of a lot of young Black people in this community. Just because the incidents are not always reported, it is because when they look at the steep hill to climb, they don't see it as worth their time. I was recently at a baby shower in Tigard, and a patron of this food cart pod where we were having the baby shower called the police because one of the patrons at the baby shower had parked in a 15-minute time spot. And the police arrived, and they were very unnerved, or just seemed to be very dismissive of our party. The woman whose baby shower it was, her father was shot and killed by police in Portland just a couple years ago. And that is unbeknownst to those officers who showed up and were irritated with our party. And that is a reminder that we don't know what people are going through. And for her to have to be triggered by that trauma and have police called on her because of a parking spot, which is out of the police's control, but they can control how they show up and how they treat people. So I think that is a reminder of the work that Washington County has to do to become a welcoming environment. To citizens who are listening, consider when you are calling the police what that might do to somebody, and say, hey, is there something else I could do? Could I have dialogue? Could I have understanding? As I transition to my next point, I think part of this also is that we can't just look at community safety as the only time that we talk about black people, right? I know it's sensationalized in the news right now that law enforcement and black people, but it goes much beyond that. Welcoming environment is how we treat our neighbors, as I said. But if we just look at law enforcement, that's a deficit-based model, and we need to look at a strengths-based model of what can we do towards the future. And that's why my topic is Black Futures. There are hundreds of black students in our schools right now in Washington County, from kindergarten through 12th grade, and that is an opportunity to correct the future and to make possible new opportunities. And part of that is making black children feel welcomed in the schools, that they are learning about their history and not just white European history. Over 54% of the students in Washington County schools are students of color, yet only 14% of the teachers are teachers of color. I myself grew up far from here in Madison, Wisconsin, and I only had one teacher, kindergarten through 12th grade. I went on to become a teacher myself because of this very reason. If there is one thing Washington County could do to advance the goals of black people in this community, is to hire more black teachers. Because when we see ourselves reflected in the education system, we will be more willing to participate in it. Too many black students do not see themselves reflected in the education system. They don't have teachers that look like them. They aren't learning about things that are relevant to their history, or people at a base level that care about them. I think more than any curriculum outcome in the education system is that students feel that they are actually smart. And I think that we are failing on that level, and that is an opportunity. We need to think about where black students are going after they graduate. We have two of the premier companies in the world in Nike and Intel in our backyard. And I think that it is important that black students are not just shopping at the Nike outlet store, but they're at the Nike headquarters designing the shoes, that they're learning about computer programming and ending up at Intel, and that there is a commitment from these companies, Intel, Nike, and others, to not hire individuals across the country, but to hire people right here in Oregon that will come back and be able to invest in the future. And I think that is my final message in all of this, is that this is an opportunity to invest. If we invest in black students and other students of color and those that are underserved, it will come back to us tenfold. It costs way more to send somebody to jail than it does to send them to college. I thank you for your time. I look forward to partnership. Our organization does walking tours all of this month. I would invite you all to come out to one of them. I know they're a little far from this area, but it's an opportunity to learn, to take action. Word is Bond wants to be a thought partner. I just mentioned a few things, but there's a lot more opportunities that we could discuss and go into and see how we can support students at all the schools in this area and make sure that it's not just about black history, but about black futures. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Lakiana, and good morning, Madam Chair and Commissioners. For the record, my name is Latricia Tillman. I'm your Chief Equity and Inclusion Officer, and I'm sorry I was not able to be there in person with you this morning. With appreciation for Mr. Drury and his work at Word is Bond and reminding us that this Black History Month is not just about looking backwards, but looking forwards. I'm very pleased to offer some introductory remarks on our cultural heritage celebration before I turn it over to Karen Chichetu from Clean Water Services and her daughter Kaylee to read the proclamation. So as you know, Washington County Cultural Heritage celebrations and resource pages are a starting point for our collective organizational engagement and learning about equity, diversity, and inclusion. And this Black History Month celebration has been planned and organized by around 15 staff who volunteered to support our learning in addition to their regular day jobs. And we are doing this in partnership with the City of Hillsborough and Clean Water Services. So the cultural celebrations offer an opportunity to enter into relationship with staff in the community who identify as Black, African, or African American to build trust and deepen our understanding of these diverse and growing communities in Washington County. And the celebrations also create an opportunity to learn about historic and present oppression of the Black community and the community's resilience in the face of that oppression. As well as resistance to oppression, which is the theme for this month's Black History Month. So we can reflect on whether or not our current policies and sentiments support the well-being of the Black community and whether they dismantle racism and white supremacy. No culture is monolithic, so there's a lot of cultures, ethnicities, nationalities that make up the Black, African, and African American community, people who emigrated to the United States freely and those whose ancestors were forcefully removed from their own lands under the bonds of slavery. Consequently, the celebrations and resource pages may not present a fully comprehensive picture of the nuances or full range of opinions within any culture or subculture. However, we are so appreciative of the thoughtfulness that the committee was able to bring to curating the celebrations that we will have this month. And we encourage people who may be curious about what is or is not presented to have a dialogue with us at the Office of Equity, Inclusion, and Community Engagement, or to reach out to members of the Planning Committee. I want to thank the members of the Black History Month Committee and the Communications Subcommittee who met for the past few weeks. We appreciate the leadership of Dale Yee from Human Resources and his support with the proclamation development, as well as Julie McLeod from the communications team. And the committee chair, Kimmy Nord from Land Use and Transportation, and Sam Abdi, who is brand new to Washington County. And we appreciate all their work and the full committee's commitment and contributions to the Black History Month celebration. I want to close before I invite the proclamation readers up to the table by sharing the remarks of Reverend Dr. Rosalind Nichols. She shared these remarks in the support of the family of Tyree Nichols at his funeral service just a few weeks ago. Her words bring some measure of solace for the Black, African, and African American community, as well as all those who continue to resist the immeasurable violence that continues to be perpetrated against our community. She said, "May our presence remind them and the world that we see them and will not unsee them, that we hear their pain and will not grow deaf to their pain, that we hold sacred space for sorrow and rage, for persistence and righteous indignation, and we will not turn away. This day, at this hour, we hold sacred space for peace that pursues divine justice, and we will not let go until it comes, like a castle built on a sandy beach, gone too soon. like a perfect flower that is just beyond your reach, gone too soon. We will continue to pray and move our feet, continue to protest and not do politics as usual, to speak truth to power and not compromise for incremental change. We will not rest until these families can rest. And with that, I'd like to turn it over to Karen Chichetu, Water Quality Laboratory Manager, and her daughter, who will read the proclamation.
Thank you, Latricia. Good morning, Chair and Commissioners. Good morning. Whereas the Washington County Board of Commissioners takes pride in recognizing February 2023 as Black History Month, honoring the many notable contributions the people of African descent have made to our country, and whereas we celebrate the diversity of Black people in Washington County, the state of Oregon, our nation, and the Black diaspora, whether they self-identify as African, African American, Afro-Latino, Afro-Caribbean, or Black, and whereas we recognize this year's Black History Month theme of Black resistance, shining a light on the countless ways that Black Americans have resisted historic and ongoing racial discrimination, oppression, and mistreatment throughout hundreds of years, and whereas Black people have had to constantly push the United States to live up to its ideals of freedom, liberty, and justice for all, and whereas the Black community established cultural centers, medical clinics, labor unions, media outlets, financial and educational institutions in order to resist inequality and to advocate for themselves, and whereas historically Black colleges and universities emerged not only as spaces for the development of activists, artists, business owners, educators, and other professionals, but were also at the forefront of the civil rights movement, Black power, and social justice movements for nearly 200 years, and whereas Black faith institutions have traditionally served as spaces where Black communities met to organize resistance efforts and support the fight for civil, social, and human rights, and whereas African American spirituals, gospel, folk music, hip-hop, and rap have been used to express struggle, hope, and solidarity in the face of racial oppression, and whereas Black athletes have used sports as a platform to advocate for social justice and political agendas, resisting immense pressure against speaking out against political, cultural, or social issues, and whereas by resisting, Black people have helped the United States more fully embody its democratic values, achieve triumphs, successes, and progress as seen in the end of chattel slavery, dismantling of Jim Crow segregation, increased political representation at all levels of government, desegregation of educational institutions, the passage of the Civil Rights Act of 1964, the Voting Rights Act of 1965, and increased representation of Black experiences in media, and whereas Black resistance strategies have served as a model for every other social movement in our country, and the legacy and importance of these actions cannot be understated. And whereas despite these accomplishments, systemic racism persists in the United States, generating continued Black resistance that calls for lasting institutional and societal change so desperately needed in our country. And whereas we encourage all people to recognize and confront these issues by standing in the gap at every opportunity and bridge barriers with fearlessness and determination to fight against racism and bigotry and improve lack of representation of Black people, and whereas today we celebrate and affirm those who have sacrificed, yet also accomplished much in the struggle for justice and equality through Black resistance. Now therefore be it resolved that the Washington County Board of Commissioners do hereby proclaim February 1st to February 28th, 2023 as Black History Month, and calls upon the people of Washington County to observe this month with appropriate programs, activities, and reflections, and to continue our efforts to create a world that is more just, equitable, and prosperous for all.
Thank you. And with that, Commissioners, do we have a motion to proclaim this month of Black History 2023 here in Washington County.
It's my honor to make that motion.
It's my honor to second it.
We have a motion and a second, and after we take a vote, I will open the floor for commissioner comments as well as invite our guests and other members of our community who wish to join us in a photograph to join us, please. All those in favor of adopting this proclamation, please vote by saying aye or raise your hand. Aye. Any opposed? The motion carries unanimously 5-0. Are there any commissioner comments?
You must be so proud of your daughter. Oh my, you did a wonderful job. Thank you to the community leader that came and shared your words of wisdom. I'm certainly going to look up your organization words. I've always, in college, used to say, you know, with friends, when they would say, are you sure you're going to be there? My word is my bond. And I think I learned it through a poetry I read. I can't remember. I was trying to rack my head, trying to find who was, but I really appreciate you coming to share the experiences that you witnessed and heard, and I really appreciated learning more about your organization, and I'll certainly be in touch and see how I can get involved and what we can do. I'm really, you know, it's my honor to sit here as the first Black commissioner for Washington County, and I'm really glad that Washington County made this history. I said this 3 years ago when I was being sworn in, and I look forward to, I'm just so proud of Washington County and us and our staff and the proclamations. I think one of my favorite things is the cultural proclamations that we do. We learn so much, and I think you know, the only way we can build bridges is to understand and to learn more about each other's cultures and to just heal together. And I wouldn't be here if it weren't for the ancestors that endured so much pain and hurt for me to be able to accomplish and be here as a Black commissioner sitting here. So I'm really want to extend my gratitude to our community and look forward to celebrating more Black History Month here and more cultural proclamations. You know, one of the comments that you made earlier was, you know, some of the students in our schools for the first time seeing a Black teacher. You know, I was born and raised in Africa, and it wasn't until high school I've had a non-Black teacher myself. So I think it was interesting when I attended a diversity trainings, and I would hear people talk about, you know, I've never had a Black teacher or somebody that looked like me, and here I was sitting the opposite, you know, until I came to America. I've always had a Black teacher, and the things that we take for granted, right? Like for me, it was like, that's where I lived, Africa. We're all the same and look alike in terms of color. We're all Black people, and then we come here, and there are so many kids that are starved from that opportunity to see, you know, to somebody that reflects their identity, because in this country, we're so like race-driven, you know, first, and that's why I always say I'm a Black woman instead of saying woman and Black, and I think it's a journey. I think I'm learning a lot about the dynamics of race and racism and all the stuff in America, but I'm hopeful that we'll heal, and I'm glad that there's these opportunities that exist to share the history and how we can overcome. And I'll repeat my favorite phrase, we shall overcome. I do believe.
Other commissioners?
I'd like to thank our guests as well. You did an amazing job, all of you, and I much appreciate it. And I'm thankful for our staff and Commissioner Five for helping lead the way here and sharing with us what's important and how we can look forward to the future. Thank you.
The only thing I'd say is, and this is not polite for a gentleman to say to a lady, but how old are you? Yes.
I'm 15. I'm turning 16 in May.
I can only speak from a male's perspective, not a female's, but males could not do what you did at 15 years old. They would have been up there looking for every exit that they could find. So congratulations. And I would tell you one other thing. Maybe you ought to take a look at what your mother's doing. We have great opportunities for folks in the wastewater business. Not glamorous, I understand, but it's one occupation that's really, really needed. So thanks for working with us. Encourage your daughter to take a look at that profession. It's a good one. Thank you for being here. You did a great job.
Commissioner Rogers, the future is female.
The gauntlet has been thrown.
Without some males, there will be no females. We got to do this together.
I'm not sure I like the way this conversation has devolved, but nonetheless, thank you so very much for sharing your time with us, encouraging us as elected officials to continue our journey in serving our community members to ensure that we continue to acknowledge our past, resist oppression, and ensure that every person has the opportunity to thrive here in our community. And I really sincerely appreciate the three of you taking time out of your busy day to be here with us today, to bring voice to this important work and to help us recognize this month. Thank you. So with that, I would invite our leadership, the board, and our invited guests to come up and have a picture taken.
Heard that invite.
Oh, good. Ms. Tillman can be up on the screen.
Let's see if we're gonna do. Yes, here we are. I'll do a selfie. You do one end, I'll do the other. One, two, three, and one, two, three. Beautiful.
Oh, that's wonderful.
Yes, I bring a whole set for them. Written by the officers.
I never do. What I say in private, I do. I love that. No, I'm saying like, what happened? Oh, yeah, no.
Yeah, I'll get the low down on that.
When I was under the. Okay, everybody. We continue to have some items on our agenda moving forward. Thank you again for our community members for helping us with the Black History Month proclamation. We have 3 different public hearings and 4 items on our action agenda. So the first public hearing, whoops, sorry, I need to get my notes here, will be conducting a public hearing adopting findings and grant exemption from the community bid process for the Center for Addictions Triage and Treatment Project, and hopefully approving the use of an alternative competitive contracting process. So I'd like to invite Kristen Burke, our project supervisor from Health and Human Services, and Stuart Spofford.
Spafford, yes.
Thank you. From our Facilities and Park Services Capital Improvement Group. He's the project manager for the CAT. Please, staff report.
All right, good morning, Chair Harrington and commissioners. I'm Stuart Spafford from the Capital Projects Group. I'm a project manager for the CAT project for the facility side. With me, of course, is Kristen Burke from HHS. We work together to bring to fruition the CAD, to bring the CAD project to fruition. So we're doing it together and in partnership. We're here today to recommend hiring a construction manager and general contractor, CMGC, for the CAT project. Just a quick overview in case people don't know what the CAT project is, but it is the Center for Addictions, Triage, and Treatment, and it's commonly called CAT. It's a project to increase substance use treatment capacity in Washington County. The CAT will house 2 sets of services on 2 different sites. We have the intensive services, which include residential treatment, sobering, withdrawal management, and stabilization and transition. And then in the community services, we will have outpatient services, peer recovery supports, crisis services, and health services. A summary of the building work to date. The intensive services will utilize the old WACA 911 building when they move out, with an addition located on the Evergreen, and it's located on the Evergreen Parkway in Beaverton. The Community Services Building has been purchased and is located at the Elam Young Parkway in Hillsborough. Schematic design has been completed by Holst Architects and their consultants, and the first round of cost estimates are completed, and we are now doing some value engineering. At this point, we are trying to select a general contractor. We've talked to purchasing, and we looked at 2 approaches: the traditional design bid build, and the alternative, which is the construction manager general contractor, CMGC. We recommend the CMGC, and we need approval from the board. The CMGC process brings the construction contractor into the project early during design, and there are some benefits that will help the project, we believe. The shortened construction schedule, they have a truer construction costs. They will be able to get us real information on how much things are costing at the time. They will be able to identify cost savings options during the design so they can get incorporated before we go to construction. They can reduce change orders, which is important, and they have input on the construction methods, which can speed up the process for the construction. The selection process would be through an RFP, the request for proposals, and the CMG would be selected based on the qualifications, experience with the project type, experience with the CMGC role, and the company's commitment to equity, diversity, and inclusion, the availability of key leaders in their workforce, and the ability to partner with the county staff and architectural team. Our recommendation is to authorize the use of an RFP to ensure that the selected contractor has the expertise to complete the project. Exempt the contract from the competitive bidding requirements under the county's purchasing rule 40-020, and allow public comment on the exemption as required and in accordance with the county's purchasing rules and state laws. Our requested action is for the board to adopt the findings and grant exemption from the competitive bid process for the Center for Addictions Triage and Treatment Project, and to approve the use of an alternative contracting process. I want to thank you for your attention, and we welcome any comments or questions at this point.
Commissioners, staff, thank you very much for the presentation. Using this contracting method can often, and through my experience, deliver the benefits that you've talked about. And we have significant unmet needs here in our community for these services that these two facilities would provide. Commissioners, any questions or comments?
I'm going to say the same thing. We've used that process before here in the county, and it works well. So I'm all in favor.
I just have one question, and it's a question that unfortunately I didn't have the opportunity to follow up on prior to today's meeting. And it's the material talked about the contractor would be selected based on a number of factors, and you listed those out on the slide as well. And that includes commitment to equity, diversity, and inclusion within their firm, as well as the workforce that would be used to construct these facilities. And unfortunately, there's so much that is going on here in our county that I'm not as familiar as I would like at this decision point to know how we have enumerated what the goals are, the targets that a successful respondent to the RFP would accomplish. So at this stage of the game, if you could just let me know that, yes, there are clear targets, and then I'll follow up offline, Ms. Angie, to get my information need satisfied so I remember for the next time or whatnot.
Yes, so staff will follow up with the entire board to share how those targets are included within the scoring as a follow-up to your board.
Great. I'm just not, I don't have the same level of working familiarity yet as County Commission Chair that I did in the equity through contracting work that I was familiar with as a Metro Councilor. So the work is on me to make sure that we've adopted really good targets and that we're supporting our team putting them into practice. So I own making sure I know what we've got. So thank you very much. So we have a proposal, and at this juncture, we need to open a public hearing to see if there are any community members who wish to give us feedback on this proposal to use this alternative competitive contracting process.
Thank you, Chair Harrington. Would any members in a room like to provide public testimony on this public hearing for up to 2 minutes? Not seeing anyone coming forward. Would any members viewing our meeting via Zoom today like to participate in this public hearing and make comments up to 2 minutes? I'll give you just a moment to utilize the raise hand function. Not seeing any hands. Chair Harrington.
Thank you, Clerk Moss. And with that, we'll close today's public hearing. What are the wishes of the commission with regard to adopting the findings and granting the exemption from the competitive bid process for the Centers for Addiction Triage and Treatment Project and approve the use of the alternative competitive contracting process?
So moved.
We have a motion and a second. All those in favor, please vote by raising your hand or saying aye. Thank you, commissioners. Any opposed? The motion carries unanimously, 5-0. Issue that RFP, and hello, development community, we're interested in hearing from you, and you're applying. Thank you
very much.
Thank you.
Next, we'll move on to a couple of different land use and transportation public hearings. But first, we need a motion to read A engrossed ordinance number 889 by title only. Do we have a motion?
Second.
And a second. All those in favor, please vote by raising your hand or saying aye. Thank you, commissioners. Any opposed? The motion carries unanimously, 5-0. Mr. Anderson.
Thank you, Chair. Proposed A engrossed land use ordinance number 889, an ordinance addressing minor amendments to the comprehensive framework plan of the urban area, the Bethany Community Plan, and the Community Development Code.
This has been continued from January 24th, and we have our staff here for a short staff presentation.
Thank you, Chair Harrington and Commissioners. Teresa Cherniak, Principal Community Planner with the Land Use and Transportation Department. I'm here to present a short PowerPoint for the second hearing on A engrossed ordinance number 889, which is related to minor amendments to the county's comprehensive plan. The minor, sorry, there we go. The minor amendments are to the comprehensive framework plan for the urban area, the Bethany Community Plan, and the Community Development Code. We do regularly make updates to ensure that we keep our documents up to date, effective, and accurate. The changes in this ordinance are, some are housekeeping, some are technical fixes, and some are slight policy shifts to the plan and code provisions. This is the second of 2 required hearings on the engrossment of the ordinance, which was directed by your board November 29th. So this ordinance is proposed for adoption today. At your January 24th hearing, you did receive comments from several members of the public asking for a change to one of the proposed amendments to the comprehensive framework plan. The ordinance clarifies in that policy that future development 20-acre or FD20 land use district, which is the district that we apply when areas are brought into the urban growth boundary, that be maintained until concept planning is done for that expansion area by a city and the area is annexed. Comments were received that this change would preclude the county's ability to bring an area just north of North Bethany into the UGB in order to complete Shackelford Road. Staff does believe the proposed change is consistent with metro and county policy related to UGB expansions and with the provisions that are already in the policy for the FD10 district. So at this point, we don't recommend further changes. Those letters are included in the staff packet, and we do understand additional letters were submitted and received by your board yesterday. This ordinance, like all of our land use ordinances, requires findings of compliance with the state, regional, and local planning programs. So those findings are provided as a separate agenda action item, and they detail how the amendments comply with all of those policy documents. Staff's recommendation at this point is to conduct the second of the 2 required public hearings for this engrossed ordinance, and at the conclusion of testimony, close the hearing and adopt ordinance, A engrossed ordinance number 889, and then by separate action to adopt the associated findings. And that concludes staff's presentation.
Thank you. Commissioners, do you have any questions at this juncture? No? Seeing none, I'd like to open a public hearing. Clerk Moss.
Thank you, Chair Harrington. First, we'll start with the in-room testimony. So we had Mary Manso. Mary?
Good morning. I'm Mary Manso. Metro has confirmed and reconfirmed that they have no rules prohibiting the county from planning for and urbanizing new urban growth boundary expansion areas. Although I am a supporter of annexation of UGB areas to a city, I'm also a supporter of honoring past promises. For those of you that don't know me, I have a long history with North Bethany, beginning before that day in 2002, when I was sitting with Lori Waldo in Metro Chambers when the decision was made to bring North Bethany into the urban growth boundary. Although neither Lori or I was happy about this decision, we both agreed that day to work to ensure North Bethany would be a place where people would want to make their homes. True to our word, Lori and I served on the North Bethany Stakeholder Working Group and also attended the North Bethany Technical Advisory Group meetings. I was on your planning commission when the North Bethany plan was adopted. It was also during my tenure on the planning commission that I advocated for changes to designate the Peter Court Cousin property as urban reserve rather than rural reserve to allow for the planned extension of Shackelford Road to 185th Avenue. I'm here today in hopes you will honor promises that were made to the community during the planning for North Bethany. North Bethany planning promised a direct connection to 185th via Shackelford Road. Urban development of the Peter Court Cousin property is needed to fund this construction. Adoption of A engrossed ordinance without an exception to complete the North Bethany's plan for Shackelford connection would be a mistake and is a step toward reneging on promises to the Bethany community. Thank you for your time. Any questions?
Thank you for your testimony.
Thank you. Would any other members in our auditorium wish to provide comment on this public hearing for up to 2 minutes? Not seeing anyone, so we will move to our online attendees. And first up, we have Pamela Mather. Pamela, can you hear us?
Yeah, it's Mar.
Oh,
can you hear
apologies.
Me? That's okay. Chair Harrington, I was hoping that I could get the group rate because as you see on my written testimony, I listed all the different of my cousins that I'm speaking for. So any consideration in that regard would be appreciated.
Go ahead, Ms. Marr. I believe we heard your testimony recently as well. Please go ahead.
Very good. Well, speaking of bridges, as Commissioner Fye was talking about earlier, this ordinance has one little spot in it that concerns my family, who were actually contacted by CPO 7 about a bridge and a road. So my cousin Jeff Jurgensen, I believe he's there live, he said that this little piece of the ordinance would shackle the bridge from fording Rock Creek, which I thought was kind of a funny way to think about it. But we are really interested in completing that access for the people of North Bethany to give them some relief to their transportation issues, going right through our little farm there and going on to 185th. And I know you guys know my family. All we ever wanted to do was farm. That's all we ever wanted to do. But unfortunately, you know, there's always pressures of the urban environment pushing against our property. And so, you know, I get it. I understand why you guys want to put that language in to align everything with the metro and the urban conference letter. But, you know, I just remember as a kid, you know, sitting at the dining room table and looking at all the maps, my parents, as they put together like the community plan for CPO 1. And then I remember when Metro was developed in, you know, 1993, I just kind of grew up with all this stuff. So I'm thinking that there might be some kind of a, like a conflict here, because in order for us to be part of a city, that would cherry stem us, which is really bad planning. And I know the county has taken a stand against doing cherry stem development. So that piece of property, it has already right next to a major educational institution, which is PCC Rock Creek. And it has sewer, and now it has the road alignment, and it's in urban reserve. So it's kind of like we have a target on our back, you know, the appetite for continuing to farm that property is maybe past its prime. So anyway, I may not use all my minutes, but I just wanted to support CPO 7 in saying that, you know, we're just trying to give some relief to this community, and I understand the dilemma this property is in. And with that, I yield back my time. Thank you so much.
Thank you for your testimony. Clerk Moss.
Would any other members viewing the meeting via Zoom today want to provide public comment on this public hearing, Ordinance 889, minor amendments? Give you just a moment to utilize the raised hand function. Not seeing any additional hands. Chair Harrington.
And with that, I'll close this second public hearing. And with that, I would ask for a motion to adopt A engrossed ordinance 889. We have a motion. Do we have a second?
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Clerk Moss, roll call, please.
Thank you, Chair Harrington. Commissioner Treese.
Yes.
Commissioner Willie.
Yes.
Commissioner Fye.
Yes.
Vice Chair Rogers.
Aye.
Chair Harrington.
Yes. Ordinance number 888, engrossed ordinance number 889 passes unanimously 5-0. And for the sake of time, I would entertain a motion to adopt the findings for A engrossed ordinance 889.
So move.
We have a motion and a second. All those in favor, please vote by saying aye or raise your hand. Thank you, commissioners. Any opposed? The motion carries unanimously 5-0. Next, we'll move on to our third and final public hearing for A engrossed ordinance 890. Do we have a motion to read this ordinance by title only?
So move.
Do we have a second?
Yeah.
Thank you. All those in favor of reading the ordinance by title only, please vote by raising your hand or saying aye. Thank you, commissioners. Any opposed? The motion carries unanimously. Mr. Anderson.
Yes. Proposed A engrossed ordinance number 890, an ordinance amending the Community Development Code to implement the requirements of 2021 Oregon Senate Bill 458 relating to middle housing land divisions and making minor amendments related generally to middle housing.
Thank you. And this was an item that was continued from our January 24th, 2023 meeting. And we have our staff here for a brief staff presentation. Welcome.
Thank you again, Chair Harrington and Commissioners. Teresa Cherniak, Principal Planner with Community Planning at the Department of Land Use and Transportation. I'll just do a short PowerPoint for the second hearing on A engrossed ordinance number 890 regarding middle housing land divisions. The ordinance makes changes to the Community Development Code to provide for middle housing land divisions and supplements some of the provisions that were adopted this past year regarding middle housing more generally. This is your second hearing on the engrossed ordinance. On December 6th, your board engrossed the ordinance to make several changes that were recommended by staff and the Planning Commission, and the ordinance is proposed today for adoption. Again, this ordinance, like our other land use ordinances, requires findings of compliance with the state, regional, and local planning programs. They are provided as a separate agenda item and detail how the ordinance complies with state, regional, and local policy. In particular, this ordinance helps to implement statewide Planning Goal 10, the housing goal, and county housing goals contained in our comprehensive framework plan by expanding the potential to meet housing needs for people at all income levels. Staff's recommendation is to conduct the second of the two required public hearings at the close of public testimony to close the hearing and adopt A engrossed ordinance number 890, and by separate action agenda item to adopt the associated findings. And with that, that concludes staff's presentation.
Thank you. Commissioners, do you have any questions? No? Thank you. And with that, I'd like to open the second public hearing. Clerk Moss, do we have anyone who wishes to testify?
Thank you, Chair Harrington. We had no one that signed up in the auditorium here. I do not see anyone moving forward. So online, we will start with Matt Wellner. Matt, can you hear us?
I can, thank you.
Please go ahead.
Good morning, Commissioners and Chair Harrington. I just wanted to say briefly, thank you for your consideration of this, and more importantly, thank you for all of staff's hard work on this. Between this ordinance and the prior middle housing ordinance, it was a heavy lift for staff, I know, and they've done a great job. I think the outcome of this ordinance is going to be really good for the county, and we're going to see a lot of good housing on the ground. It's going to take time, but we're going to see a lot of good housing units on the ground as a result. So I'm hopeful you're in support, and thank you for your consideration.
Thank you for your testimony.
Thank you. Next, we have, there was another hand. Would anyone else like to provide public comment on this public hearing, ordinance 890? Give you just a moment to utilize the raise hand function. Not seeing any additional hands, Chair Harrington.
Thank you. And with that, I will close this public hearing. And I would like to thank not only our staff for follow-up on this from the work that's been going on for a couple of years now on the middle housing improvements, but also to our Planning Commission and seeing all these details through so that we can be successful, particularly in the urban unincorporated areas that we're responsible for enabling the array of housing solutions that the Senate bill and the other related House bill for middle housing challenged us to address. So, Commissioners, with that, do we have a motion to adopt ordinance A engrossed ordinance 890?
So moved.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Clerk Moss, roll call, please.
Thank you, Chair Harrington. Commissioner Willie?
Yes.
Commissioner Fye?
Yes.
Commissioner Treese?
Yes.
Vice Chair Rogers?
Aye.
Chair Harrington?
Yes. Thank you. The ordinance, A engrossed ordinance 890 passes unanimously 5-0. And for the purposes of efficiency, I would like to entertain a motion to adopt the findings for A engrossed ordinance 890.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. All those in favor, please vote by raising your hand or saying aye. Thank you, Commissioners. Any opposed? The motion carries unanimously 5-0. All righty. So next we'll move on to our third action item on a topic completely different, but related to the entire geography of Washington County. And it is to authorize the 2023 emergency ambulance service rate increase. And with this, we have a couple of our subject matter experts joining us today, along with Mira Simantel, our Director of Health and Human Services, by which this topic falls. So, Ms. Simantel, please.
Thank you so much. Well, good morning, Chair Harrington, Board of County Commissioners. Again, for the record, my name is Mira Simantel. I'm the Director of Health and Human Services. We're happy to be here before you today, and I will go ahead and turn it over to the program experts. So Adrienne Donner, Program Supervisor for EMS, and Tim Case, Program Coordinator for Emergency Medical Services within Public Health.
Thank you. Good morning. Today we're going to talk about the emergency transport rate that's charged to
patients when they ride in ambulances in Washington County. We're going to give you a little bit of background on the situation. We're going to let you know what the proposed rates are, talk about how that affects the people in Washington County, and then finalize with our recommendation. In Washington County, our 911 system is a fee-for-service system, which means that the only income that our emergency transportation vendor gets is through the fees that are charged when someone takes a ride in the ambulance. This is not the case across the country. We have a variety of ways that EMS is funded. In the Tri-County region, it's consistent across all 3 counties in that they're all fee-for-service. We don't do any kind of subsidy or tax base going into our 911 vendors. We do have an ongoing, every year we go through a process of looking at what the rate is, and so wanted to just let you know what that process has been over the last many years. In March, we look at the federal numbers through the Bureau of Labor and give to the vendor their maximum increase that they can request. They then come back to us and ultimately you to petition an increase in their rates. We do have written into our franchise agreement a clause where if something extraordinary was happening, they could ask for a bigger increase. That's never been used before. I mean, we actually have a history of the transport agency asking for a reduced amount. So if they have 3% that they can ask for, they'll ask for 2%, for example, or declining a raise in some years as well. What that has done is it has really made it that our transport rates are significantly below market standards, and they've remained there because they've never been able to catch up over time, nor have they asked for exceptional increases. These low rates mostly benefit the insurance companies because our transport agency fails to recuperate the fees that they could be asking from the insurance agencies. And then that loss of income impairs the system by creating a franchisee who has a high rate of turnover and doesn't have the extra income to do updated equipment or really invest in emerging technologies. In addition, right now, as we navigate our request for proposal for the emergency transportation franchise agreement, we really need to have transportation rates that are sustainable so that whichever vendor is coming on board with the new franchise agreement, they can be sustainable and best serve Washington County. This is a national problem, this funding of EMS in general, and it's being looked at by a lot of different people, but in the 2022 national survey, which went out to EMS providers across the nation, they found that the top 3 critical issues really were retention of staff, funding or reimbursement, which is that fee-for-service funding, and recruitment of staff. And so this is nationally really a critical area. So looking at our proposed rates, which are in that second line and bolded, we're proposing to go with, which is a fairly national standard of 300 times Medicare, or 3 times Medicare. You can see our current rates on the top line, and then our comparison to Multnomah and Clackamas counties below that. We propose to continue with a flat rate rather than doing any specific billing from the franchisee. A flat rate really allows the franchisee to differentiate between the services provided in ALS, advanced life support, and basic life support, which is a difference in staffing and a difference in services, so the rates are different, but not the minutia of what Band-Aids were used or what specific services were done in the ambulance. So how this affects people in Washington County, this is the best detail we can give you without it being a gross simplification or a 3-day presentation. So if we look at Medicare and Medicaid, they have set rates. The person on Medicare or Medicaid doesn't pay out of pocket, and what we set as our fee does not change anything for that group of people. That's the easiest one to speak to. When we get to insurance or HMO, The patient oftentimes has a part in the payment, whether it's a percent payment or a co-payment. And so the information gets very detailed at that point. Each plan has an approved maximum payment amount. And that maximum is really what we're trying to help the vendor get access to, because right now they're not hitting that with their current rate. Once the bill goes to the insurance, of course, then the insured person has something to do. If you look at our example within Washington County, today I have Kaiser. I pay $75 if I take an ambulance. I've had that experience. If we change the rate, I'll still pay $75. On Providence, it's a percentage, so they'll pay a little bit more because they pay about 20% of the transport rate. So it'll go up a little bit. And that's just our two examples. You can imagine across the county, there's lots of other examples. The final is the uninsured patient. In Washington County, we have about 6% who are uninsured. And they're the ones that we're most concerned about and that we would watch closely. What we know is that our EMS transport vendor and vendors nationwide write off a significant percentage of their unfulfilled payments as just lost funding. And for us, it's about 8% that are written off and 6% are uninsured. So those are really looking at that being the biggest percent of write-offs. They're not chasing them down for payment. They're just writing it off as not attainable funds. I know you're behind. If we're financially sustainable, it looks better, our system works better, it's safer and reliable. So our recommendation to you is to move forward with the rates as proposed on the rate slide. We did some very gross math, looking just at our advanced life support transportations and the fact that about 20% of those are paid for by people who have insurance. And that leaves about $3.5 million of insurance money uncollected each year based on the current rate, which we'd like to fix. We also want to look at the increased rate to provide better care to the community. Our EMTs and paramedics work really hard, long, stressful hours. Most of them love what they do. They're not there for a golden ticket by any means. But our system has a history of those folks who are providing this life-saving care having a second job, having a side job, doing these things. And if we can get a prevailing working wage and better benefits and just overall better system, we can reduce that higher turnover and thus maintain that experienced workforce that will really improve the services in Washington County. It also allows for a vendor who can invest in new technologies and advanced equipment as it comes up. So then the policy question to you is, do you approve of the proposed rates for emergency transportation in Washington County?
Commissioners, do you have any questions or comments on the staff report or the proposal? Commissioner Rogers.
Just a comment. When I first was briefed on this, or in fact we all were, I didn't like any part of it. The fees were going up way too high. It was not pleasant. But like my colleague to the far end of the dais, Commissioner Willie, we're both CPAs, and we started analyzing what you're doing, and it made sense. And the reason it makes sense is because the insurance coverage, I asked about people who really don't have the economic means to pay this, and there's programs that will help to cover that. And so the only loser in not raising these fees is the county and the service level that I can see, unless there's something different. But that was a great analysis a few weeks ago. I think it's important for the public who's viewing this to understand that we're not keen about raising rates either, but I don't see appreciable impact on anyone other than insurance companies and some of our programs, but not to the individual users. So I'm in favor.
Thank you, Commissioner Rogers. Anyone else? I would ask for a motion to approve the proposed rates for emergency transportation in Washington County.
So moved.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. All those in favor, please vote by raising your hand or saying aye. Thank you, commissioners. Any opposed? The motion carries unanimously 5-0. Thank you very much, staff, for your detailed work.
Thanks for your work on this. This is very good.
We have just one action item remaining on today's agenda, and it's with regard to affordable housing. So our staff worked on a notice of funding approval and entertained applications, and they and our Committee on Housing Affordability put together a proposed slate to the Board of Commissioners. And so here today, we have an action before us to approve the Metro Affordable Housing Bond NOFA funding recommendation of the Woodland Hearth Project for $9,450,000 in Metro Housing Bond funds. And with us, we have our Director for Housing Services, Mr. Comey Cullivar. Welcome.
Thank you. Good morning, Chair Harrington and Commissioners. My name is Comey Cullivar. I'm Housing Director. I have a brief staff report on this action item for you. We had allocation of $116 million from Metro for the Metro Affordable Housing Bond. That was supplemented by $2 million for air conditioning, the ports and air conditioning, as when we had a heat event. So total of 118. We had 13 million left. So we issued a notice of funding last year, October, and we got 5 responses requesting 48 million for the 13 million we have available. Very good projects, I might add, but we are constrained by how much we have left. So we issued a NOFA. We wanted 30%, that's extremely low-income units. We wanted more 2 bedrooms with a focus on 3 and 4 bedrooms for families, and then inclusion of permanent supportive housing units. So from there, we convened a review committee made up of volunteers, including 2 members of the Housing Advisory Committee, and staff, Washington County staff with knowledge of housing and planning and that stuff. So we had a few meetings, and the teams scored all the proposals. The Woodland Hearth project came up tops because it had, and that was recommended for concept endorsement. The Woodland Park had a higher number of family units. About 63% of the units are 2 bedrooms or more. About 38% are PSH units. And then the developer is Community Partners for Affordable Housing. They have long experience in providing the type of housing the Metro Affordable Housing Bond called for. So 63 units. They have, CEPA also has service partners, Community Action here in Washington County. HAKI, H-A-K-I, it's a group that is formed to help immigrants from Eastern Africa integrate into society. HAKI is actually a Swahili word for bringing people together. I'm not 100% sure about that. It's a loose interpretation. They try to help people from that area integrate into American society. And then the third partner is Native American Rehabilitation Association. So 3 service partners, very well-known nonprofit developer here in Washington County. And I'd like to just briefly mention the other applicants because they all have very worthy proposals. REACH CDC had a proposal for Dartmouth Crossing in Tigard. Related Northwest had a proposal in Tualatin called Hawks Landing. And then Stewardship Partners, they also has another proposal also in Tualatin. And then the last one was Just Compassion, also in Tigard, proposing transitional housing. As I mentioned earlier, we only had enough funding for one project, which is the one before you today, for a concept endorsement. We would program the $3.5 million left of Metro dollars by talking first with the second place, third place, and if those doesn't work out, we'll find uses that work for the program. But with your approval, we'll be meeting all the requirements of the Metro bond in terms of people served, number of units, units for extremely low income, units for 2-bedroom plus, and then PSH units. We would exceed all of those goals with your approval, your action today. With that, I'll take questions.
You and your team have done really excellent work on this. I'll kick off the questions, and I want to say thank you for all of that work, not only from you and your staff, but also the community for putting these dollars into action. The question that I have is, so this is our approval of these funds for the concept endorsement, and so after this action today, you go and work the Metro process to ensure that those dollars can be applied to the project. My question is about the remaining major milestones. So I believe what goes forward is anchoring the full funding for the project.
Mm-hmm.
And then after the full funding picture is clear, then the project can really have its groundbreaking ceremony when the construction gets going. And then from there, all the finishing of the construction, the lease up, and then the grand opening. Have I got the major steps right, or are there some other major steps that we might see in order to get to construction, for example?
Yes, you have them correct, Chair Harrington. Yes, we'll be coming back one more time before the financial closing.
Oh, finance.
Well, final, yeah.
Thank you.
But other than that, you lined it out very well.
Thank you. I know there are multiple moving parts, so thank you very much for continuing to ensure I understand those. Commissioner Treese.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you very much for this work, and I'd just like to echo the fact that I appreciate the work that the staff has gone through here. It's encouraging to see these family-sized units coming online, but I also want to thank you for the difficult process going through to make this choice, because all of them had very strong presentations and met a need that we have in the community. This one, I think, fits the best, but the others had a great deal of merit as well. So thank you for your work.
Thank you.
Any other commissioners? No. With that, do we have a motion to approve this housing, affordable housing bond NOFA funding recommendation of the Woodland Hearth Project as stated earlier in Metro Housing Bond Fund?
Moved.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. All those in favor, please vote by raising your hand or saying aye. Thank you, commissioners. Any opposed? The motion carries unanimously 5-0. Thank you very much.
Thank you, commissioners.
Next, we're at our second public comment period of this morning's meeting. This is an opportunity for members of our community to address us for up to 5 minutes an individual. Clerk Moss, do we have anyone who wishes to testify?
Yes, we do, Madam Chair. We have Razan Rashan. Razan, can you hear us? Razan, can you hear us?
Yes, I can hear you. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can. Please go ahead for up to 5 minutes.
Great. Good morning, commissioners and staff members. This is Razia Rashian, representative of Tualatin Valley Creates, your art service organization for Washington County. I just want to commend you and all of the guests today for recognizing Black History Month and the work that you're doing to make a more equitable living space here in Washington County. So thank you all. I just want to share some very quick updates. echoing the economic benefits of our creative sectors and the way that our creative sectors add to the livability here in Washington County. Some updates you guys have heard over the last few weeks that Tualatin Valley Creates is working with Clackamas County representatives, Multnomah County representatives, staff from the Regional Arts and Culture Council, and staff from the City of Portland on a program that's being called Our Creative Future. This is work between our 3 counties to engage our community members, to do some asset mapping on the arts here, as well as across the 3 counties, and how we can all come together to prepare a plan of action in which representatives from the communities who do event coordination, who work with nonprofits, and who are municipal leaders can continue to create a thriving creative ecosystem. We're working on this. We'll be doing our first round of engagements on February 22nd. So I will be sending you all an invite if you're available, as well as reaching out to our different developers and architects in the area and our small and medium-sized cultural institutions. Tualatin Valley Creates is also working on the Arts and Economic Prosperity Study. It's the data that I share with you in regards to the report that was issued in 2017. And we are currently doing our audience intercept surveys. This is in partnership with the Americans for the Arts, the Oregon Cultural Trust, and representatives from our Tri-County area. The audience surveys will conclude in May, and we are about to launch surveys to the organizations who employ many of our residents here in Washington County, and then we'll be able to bring you back that report in October this coming fall. So I just wanted to give you a quick update on all the work that's happening behind the scenes. Obviously data collection, but really the way that these efforts impact the people who live and work here and why people call Washington County home. Our contact information, our website is www.tvcreates.org. That's TualatinValleyCreates.org. And I look forward to sharing those updates with you via your email and your assistants and your staff. Thank you all.
Thank you, Ms. Roshan, and thank you for the work you continue to do at Tualatin Valley Creates as the art touches and brings joy and provokes and helps community members thrive throughout Washington County and beyond.
Would any other members viewing our meeting online via Zoom want to provide comment on any county-related topic for up to 5 minutes? Give you just a moment to utilize the raise hand function. Not seeing any additional hands. Chair Harrington.
Thank you, Clerk Moss. And with that, I'll move to board announcements. February is flying by already. We will not be having our weekly board meetings next week as multiple commissioners are away traveling on business. The following Tuesday, February 21st, we'll have a work session that starts at 9. We'll pause that for our board meeting starting at 10 a.m., just like today, and then reconvene from there. Also that week, on Thursday, February 23rd, we invite all of our community members to join us in one of our quarterly Board of Commissioner town halls. You can join us in person at the Washington Street Conference Center, just down the street here in Hillsborough, or you can view it online on YouTube or via Zoom. And there is interpretation, as always, available, as well as the ability for you to pose your questions. So I hope you'll join us starting at 6 p.m. The following Tuesday is the last Tuesday of the month, February 28th. So we will have a work session in the afternoon starting at 2, and then our board meeting in the evening starting at 6:30. And then we're off to the meetings in March already. That first Thursday, March 2nd, we'll have our roundtable starting at 9 a.m. Then the following Tuesday, March 7th, we'll have our work session at 9, our board meeting at 10. And our packet board announcements does list the remaining meetings of the month of March 14th and 21st, and we will not be meeting the week of March 28th, Tuesday the 28th, as that is spring break and as part of our effort to support our employees and families. We will not be holding our meetings during the public school spring break. So that is it for my board announcements. Commissioners, do you have anything you wish to add? Seeing none, I would ask for a motion to adjourn today's business meeting.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. All those in favor, please vote by raising your hand or saying aye. Thank you, commissioners. Any opposed? This meeting is hereby adjourned. And we'll reconvene in work session in about 5 minutes. See you at